The Day of the Rope by Devon Chapter 21. Wayne had received several messages about the incident happening in California. The right was blaming the left was blaming the right. His handler had called him, her usual flirtatious demeanor conspicuously absent, and made it extremely clear that he was expected to blame it on right-wing extremists that were dangerous to democracy, and to not only promote his message of peace and harmony, but apologize for the actions of the extremists on his side. When Wayne had asked his handler if they had any proof that the attacks had been carried out by right-wing extremists, the response had been vague, and the conversation had returned back to how urgent it was that he began speaking on live streams and on television about the dangers of right-wing extremism. Wayne was no fool. He knew, as did many of the people online saying the exact opposite, that it very well could be the people on the right who had carried out the attack, and just like them, he hoped that it was. It was about time his side stopped reacting to attacks from the left and from the globalist mafia that ran the government. About time they gave them a taste of their own medicine. The genius of this attack, assuming it really was the work of the people on the right, wasn't just the expertly chosen targets. It wasn't even the fake Anifas accounts that had been claiming responsibility all morning. It was that whoever had carried out the attack had correctly identified the public's tipping point. The timing had been perfect. The perpetrators knew that the media and the government's credibility was so damaged, beyond repair, that even if they were caught and confessed on live television, nobody would believe them. They had reached the historic moment in the divide. Sides had been chosen, and the right was finally prepared to do what the left had been doing for decades. The right was now prepared to defend anything that their side did, even terror attacks if they thought it ultimately helped them. The right and left were no longer two sides of the aisle, but completely separate entities seeking to undo the other. This was the event horizon, the great mitosis of his nation. It was time to feed the fire. This was the moment he had been waiting for. He was about to go live and pour the gasoline he'd been storing for months when he received a flurry of messages. There was something else happening, this time on the East Coast, not far from Wayne's hospital room. It wasn't a terror attack like what was happening in California. This was far stranger. A famous pastor at the largest megachurch in Virginia, if not the country, had played a video confession from Alice Green's campaign manager to all his parishioners and over all of his satellite feeds and internet streams to the thousands that watched around the world. In the video, Brad Valentini made the claim that the government had been subverted by Satanists. He claimed that ritual abuse and human trafficking was common and that he'd seen it personally, and he even participated in it. He said he had video evidence of every top person, and claimed that all of the intelligence agencies already had the evidence and had covered it up for decades. That's when the satellite feed had gone down. Wayne watched the video that someone had recorded from the satellite feed and then posted online. The video looked real, but it was grainy and dark, and Valentini looked as though he was under duress. The left would explain this away as the work of his sadistic killer without taking a moment to think about how that contradicted the whole botched robbery narrative. Wayne hoped that these videos Valentini had mentioned existed and that someone had them. Even with no evidence, the left would never believe it. That didn't matter anymore. The divide had already taken place. What the videos would do was wake up the remaining drones on the right and stir them into action. Extended versions of the video were beginning to appear from members of the congregation that had recorded the full confession and parts of the blackmail videos on their phones. The videos were being taken down almost as fast as they were being posted, but there were thousands of them. Wayne couldn't figure out why so many in the audience, which was in the thousands, had thought it necessary or had the wherewithal to record a video being played at the church. That was until he found the longer version, which included the pastor instructing the congregation to do precisely that. It was brilliant. The videos had been recorded from numerous devices and from several unique vantage points. The censorship software that was typically used to scrub videos from the internet couldn't recognize all the different videos as coming from the same source. The differences in the copies made it impossible to automatically identify each of the individual versions that were being uploaded. What made the videos even more difficult to shut down was that they were being uploaded to thousands of different accounts all at once. This cat was completely out of the bag. Wayne watched just enough of the blackmail videos to get sick to his stomach. The version he had seen was low quality, and the person who had been recording it had started shaking and crying halfway through it. In fact, many of the videos didn't make it too far into the really disgusting stuff because the crowd at the megachurch, where most of the videos were originating from, had become unruly, and many had fled the building in rage, disgust, and disbelief. Wayne understood the rage, and like many of them, he had seen enough. Wayne took a deep breath. This was it. This is what he had been waiting for. This was his chance. The censors would be so busy with the Valentini videos that they wouldn't be able to stop his broadcast before it was too late. Wayne tapped the camera icon on his streaming app, and an image of himself appeared on his phone. He looked like hell, but that wasn't important now. It's been a crazy day, folks. Crazy day, Wayne said to his live audience as the numbers began to swell. I'll wait a few more moments for people to tune in now, but wow. First California and now this thing with Valentini. This changes everything, folks. That might not be what you expected from me, but the curtain that divided Wayne's hospital room was suddenly flung aside, revealing Eve, who was lunging at Wayne with the knife raised over her head. Die, you fucking Nazi, she screamed as she slammed against the side of Wayne's bed, ripping the curtain down from the railing in the ceiling as she fell. The knife slashed Wayne's arm and then slid squarely into his belly, just below his ribcage. He dropped his phone and reflexively reached for the blade. It sliced through his hands as Eve brought it up over her head once again and then plunged it back down into his chest. Wayne tried to wrestle the knife from his attacker, and the two of them crashed to the floor. Somehow, the curtain had ended up wrapped around Wayne's head. He couldn't see anything. He felt the knife enter his body again, this time somewhere near his left shoulder. He felt what he thought might be Eve's hair on his hand, and he grabbed it. He yanked as hard as he could, and heard her scream in pain. Then, Wayne felt the tip of Eve's knife pierce his Adam's apple. Warm liquid filled his mouth and nose. He sputtered and coughed, and feebly tried to untangle himself from the curtain. He heard the voices of the orderlies yelling and screaming. He felt the knife penetrate his chest again and again, but then finally it stopped. For a moment, Wayne thought the orderlies must have separated him from the curtain because everything became extremely bright. There was a high-pitched sound. It sounded like the sound that old tube TVs made when they were warming up. He remembered when he was a kid. He used to get up early on the weekends before his parents were awake so he could have the TV all to himself. There was this kids show. He couldn't remember the name of it, but kids would bring in inventions onto the show, and they would compete for the title of Best Kid Inventor. Wayne loved that show. What was its name? He always wanted to be on that show. What was the name of that show? Dr. something. As Wayne struggled to remember the words to the theme song, he was convinced they had said the name in the theme song. He heard a familiar sound in the distance. It seemed as if it were coming from the other side of a tunnel, and Wayne had found it hard to focus on it. It was a reminder he had set up on his phone. Where was his phone? It sounded so far away. He was supposed to have done something when he heard that sound. Oh shit, I forgot, was the last thing he thought. End of chapter 21.